are we doing out here after dark? Why are we at the garden? And why aren't we doing this during the day? I'll get into all that in just a minute. But what we're out here, this is the other portion of our garden that we have, a couple raised beds at the other side of the pasture. And it is that time of year when we have to start making winter preparations. So we're out here getting ready to cover these because tonight is the first night that it is getting close to freezing. And for this, we're just going to take some basic plastic. It's like the same type like you'd use for painter's cloth. It's thin, it will allow the light to go through, but it will keep most of the heat in, kind of having like a hothouse or a miniature greenhouse effect on these plants right here. So we do still want them to get light. This is our fall garden here. We've got several plants. They cannot take the extreme cold, but they are good for the cooler season. I'm just getting this rolled out, and then it's going to spread out where we can put it on top. So the big question is, why are we doing this at night? Well, I've got two good reasons. And the first, simplest and less important one is, at least for this circumstance, is because we wanted to get them their last good warm day uncovered. So I wanted to wait until later in the day so that they could get all that heat in, get the sun, get it directly to maximize their continued growth. But there is another more important reason why I'm out here at this time of night. At least more important as to the decision itself. And that would be because I've had a couple busy days and I simply did not have time to get out here in the daylight. So it either happens at this time of day or it doesn't happen. Here we are, just working on spreading it out here. Actually, stop. Going?
Yes.
This plastic is just wide enough to be able to cover it all. It does not have to go all the way to the ground, though that would give its best coverage, because that still allows some airflow for them to be able to breathe. And yes, in case you don't realize it, plants do breathe. Taking in oxygen, or taking in carbon dioxide, giving off oxygen. In case you hear in the distance, that little clanging of metal is the cows making their presence known, rubbing up against the shelter. Get this down to the ground as much as possible. Every spot where it's up will be a space for potential heat loss. Which, given the mild winters in Georgia, that's not a big deal having a little bit, but it will get them closer and may shorten their lives. Now we're placing down these boards. These are just some boards we have here on the property that will help to weigh this down. It does not have to completely cover, but it needs to cover enough to where it is securely holding the cover in place. In fact, that was warped one direction. Board was warped one way. I turn it around so it'll cover it completely. And that is good for this side. A little aeration there. Again, because we have the mild winters in Georgia, we don't have to have it tight to get a full closure. On the other side here, you want to make sure it's not any tighter than necessary. One to cover the end. One on the very end. Guess Arlo wants to make sure he's heard in the video. So there we are, we've got it all covered. It's something we can easily get into, just have to lift up one side to check it, water it. But we are now winterized for this garden. And again, this has to do with we have the mild winters here in Georgia. If you've got something where it gets a lot colder, you may need more coverage in this. But this is what we have found works well for us. All right, we're going to go ahead and move over to another area and cover some individual plants. But while we're doing that, if you can go ahead and, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit like on the video. That helps us out, and we'll go ahead and move on to there. All right, just to give a real quick explanation here before we head over to the other plants. We just covered this, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this back for just a moment just to check how the coverage is working. And just even lifting this up right here, I will tell you, just going right here to right here, even though it's only been covered for a few minutes, I can already feel a difference. I'm going to leave that cover it back up pretty quick so that it keeps the heat in. But just as a quick demo, just that real quick right there, I can feel the difference already just with that little layer of plastic on here. So it is definitely working, keeping the warmth inside. All right, let's go ahead and move on. And here's the next spot. We have some aloe growing here, which of course is a subtropical plant. And what's great is when you can actually just reuse some materials. In this case, these are some product recovery bags that we just had. Put them around, they are just about big enough. Maybe not quite. And that is not big enough. I was thinking it was. Let's go to this other one over here and let's see. This is a little bit smaller, so we should be able to get it to work on there. Now ideally you want them actually covering enough to where the plant is not actually touching the cover. As this is, it is very likely that these tips will probably get damaged, which is not a big deal. They'll recover. But any of this surface area actually touching could be damaged in the cold. And we've actually got just a couple rocks and bricks that we keep out here for this purpose, to hold this down from blowing away. And there's the first one. We'll just do this. We've got about 4 of them. We'll go ahead and cover up. And I know I have an extra large recovery bag here. It's not quite big enough to actually cover 2, but it'll definitely get this one. Again, this will still let light through. There'll only be the slightest amount of airflow, but it will be enough to help them survive through the cold. one's almost weightless. Put some weights on here. So nice of the tree to donate some of its branches earlier in the season. So we can weight this down. Doesn't take a whole lot of weight to keep it in place, just a little bit. There we are, these two are winterized. Let's get this next one. This looks like it's probably not quite going to fit, but we'll try it. Now when you have big leaves like this, there is one other option, and that is to go ahead and harvest these big leaves. These have several uses, medicinal and dietary. The loss of these leaves will only be a minor setback to the plant. I did not think to bring a knife out here for harvesting. I was only thinking about protecting. Ideally, you would want to take a knife and just slice it off, but that is breaking off cleanly. You don't want to remove too many at once, but just a couple of the big ones. These along the back, they're actually getting to the point where they were almost being buried anyways, so they weren't going to do much good for production. You do want to be careful not to damage the plant. So protect that one. There we go. That one's protected, and we have a good fall harvest of aloe. And here's number 4. Last one for tonight. Double check, make sure I haven't forgotten one down the line more. In fact, this one has a nice sprout on the side here. Definitely want to protect that as well. Now this situation with picking these leaves, this is one more reminder why a blade of some sort should be a standard complement anytime you go out on the farm or pretty much around any property. Whether it be for safety or just functionality. But of course, the time when I'm out without it would be the time I need it. Oh, there's another sprout right there. This one's being nice and productive. That's new shoots for the spring that'll take off and get established themselves. Here's another one. This one's doing nicely. I think we may have to switch covers. Alright, I just harvested the some of the bigger leaves off the first plant. We're just going to go ahead and cover this one up. Protect the parent and the babies here. Simple coverage, just fix around the side. Still want to keep it a little loose anyways, just to let the slightest bit of airflow in. And there we are. Parent and babies all protected for the winter. Now of course, looking at these two, if we do end up getting any kind of hard freeze where it gets really cold, colder than expected, there's always the option I can throw an additional tarp over this for any given night for when it gets real cold, just to give it some added protection. But this should be enough to get it through possibly the entire winter, but if not, then at least most of it, and then just supplement with the tarp on top. But there we go, all set. Here we are back at the house with a beautiful fall harvest of lots of aloe that we can use for juice or medicine or just good nutrition.